When I first started playing D&D, my first ever character was an elf. Her name was Janix, and she was a ranger. Back then, she was literally just Evangeline from Wakfu, if you know what that show is. Uh, because I always liked the fantasy of elves, specifically as hunters to me. Um, and like it has always like stuck with me because I always like elves. I like using elves with in my sort of thing because I like I like elves. Like my first races that I always think of for fantasy is elf. Really it depends on the setting since uh there are different like ways of telling the elf, but like I specifically like the image of the wood elf. Like like of course I talked about Evangeline, but also like wood elves from Warhammer Fantasy or like wood elves from traditional D&D, like wood elf in like the idea of like elf with a bow and like a hood or like like a fur mantle or something like that. I also really like Marcel from Dungeon Meshi, and like her kind of like thematic fantasy of being a casting elf. That's also a neat thing. But I kind of ingrained myself in the media of fiction. I like specifically like fantasy and sci-fi, which kind of uses this type of stuff. Of course, I I like the different ways of using different like species. Uh, my like for instance, my favorite like I love dwarves, both in the half naked short man. I love slayers, but I also love like Votan and Deep Rock Galactic, and I also really like I also really like Rock and Stone. I also really like uh what's their fucking names? The fucking like steampunk guys and Age of Sigmar. And like of course there's also like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, and the thematic fantasy of different like species, even humans, is important for you to for you to explore that thing. I like and one specific like species or race, whatever, that has always like befuddled me is orcs. More specifically, the discourse around orcs as a fantasy race, right? Because when you think of an evil race, you think of an orc. Unless you think of a drow because, you're a fucking sub or something like that. You're a bottom. But but orcs, specifically, their discussion around being an evil race is interesting to me because, like, I've always seen orcs as the fantasy trope, right? Because, like, yes, there's different types of fantasy, but like, there's different types of fantasy and how you kind of like perceive it. But like, you for orcs, you can't really like you're not you have like a main idea, right? Because like they're like the monstrous race. and not I mean like dragons or like stuff like that, but like they're the big bulky guys. They're the guys of strength. Like they're the fighting guys. And like I can see the appeal of that. Like being like the guy to punch something, being tribal, being this barbarian. They're like the quintessential barbarian in some things. Um but orcs, to me, I've always have like uh a different way of kind of uh telling their story, because like orcs are, to me, resilient, and they are strong, and they're like one I guess orcs, to me, have like varied uses uh in how you kind of like tell a story with orcs. And I specifically wanted to talk about three main ones. Like, the first two are, of course, like the evil race orcs, and the second one is gonna be the more like sympathetic orc, quote, like, so, sympathetic orcs in sort of recent fantasy. The last one, yeah, I'll save that for later. But like, I wanted to specifically talk about like people like having their discourse and like orcs being like an evil race, and how the orcs are used are it confuses me, because like it's fantasy, and I wanted to highlight like the several ways that you can like use orcs in your setting, and in how you tell your story. And I'll start off with the first one. This is basically the first iteration of the orc, or otherwise known as the Orokai. You know, the evil orc, the evil race that kind of like started out the evil uh, enemy, the horde. You know, um, that this like iteration of the orc uh has like, to me, like a varied like amount of representation in the media, more than just like, of course there's it's always been like the status quo, but the way that it's been represented has like varied, because like, of course we have like stuff like uh, games and other media that has expanded on this idea. But what really makes it interesting to me is because orcs as an evil race, or as like a monster, is interesting because like in D&D, there, or like, the adventurer like enemies, it's orcs, skeletons, and or like undead and demons. That's like the things that I personally think of as like your traditional evil faction, like enemy type thing. um of course it can also vary, but that's like the popular like idea of it, the fantasy trope. But what makes it interesting is that what I think, the reason why people like the idea of orcs as an evil race and monster, And the reason why there was such like upheaval on the recent like monster manual for G&D 5e, its newest one, where they didn't have the orc, is because orcs are like a monster with a personality, right? Because, like, of course there's dragons, but let's take dragons out of the equation for a second. Undead don't have a personality, and demons are such like a high level of being that to make it interesting you need to be like at a high level. But like an orc as like a grunt or as like the foot soldier of like an evil sorcerer's army, Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, the Tolkien books, is interesting because the main appeal of them is because they're despicable with a personality, or they have like something to go off of. Because what makes them interesting is that they're they're a monster with a personality that can like that can laugh, that can cheer, that can yell, that can that and they have like a personality that allows you to kind of bounce off of them like a rival. We have the Shadow of Morrowind. It literally has an entire goddamn like system around rivals, or like what I can't remember what it was called. But you had the thing with orcs that makes them interesting in this sort of way is because we wanted a monster that that is like vaguely human shaped, but like is monstrous enough and has like this personality that you can kind of bounce off of it. It is a rival, and it is the sense of like a monstrous type of person. It is an obstacle, and it is this and again a monster. Like Lord of the Rings and like stuff like that have kind of shown that more of a monstrous type of thing, and Warcraft notably has like large imposing barrier bodies that makes orcs kind of like this imposing sort of thing, it's kind of like the same idea that like it's the same reason why we will why monsters why goblins are sort of like revered, because like goblins are little guys that are little shits and have a personality, and they can kind of like bounce off of a goblin, like, and being a creature what makes goblins appealing, while being a monster is what makes orcs appealing, because like they're like a monster that is humanoid sort of thing, if you're catching my drift. And I guess that kind of leads into the next sort of orc type that I immediately think of.
You came all of this way to dig up a magic portal.
It is the path to a new world. You believe this? I believe in Gul'dan. I believe in the Fel.
Now, these sort of orcs are interesting, especially since like they fit the niche of being the muscle. You want, because like if you play an orc or you like orcs, you like them in the sense that they're like, like almost himbos in a way. Like of course that's one of the fantasy, but like being the strong guy, being the strong like person in like your party, like dual axes, giant weapons, or like shields, or like being like a bar like a barbarian. Like this is the kind of appeal with orcs. Well, of course, I personally subscribe to the idea that orcs have a varied like way of being used in this sense, because like them being more sympathetic characters, or that sort of sense, like think Warcraft or anything like that, like you that is the general like outline of what an orc is. Like, you know, the shoulder pads with the strap, or like big weapons, like, or like dual axes, a lot of axes actually. uh, Also like fur mantles, or for like fur coats, pelts, big metal suits of armor. But I also see like other ways of using the orc archetype as like, uh you know, of like I one of the game that I'm currently playing in a game that's basically like fantasy, a Starfinder Pathfinder game, a Paizo system. Um, I'm currently playing in a game that's about like basically like a fantasy setting that has uh all of this like diesel punk, like it's in like World War II type stuff. I'm playing a satyr. Her name is Oki. Uh, and specifically the orcs in that setting have been made to be like cowboys, which, like, if you really think about it, orcs like being like this wild men kind of like give like them to make them the perfect like cowboy, because like you can make an orc a gunslinger, and like it would feel like natural almost, especially with them like with them having like their varied body types, also almost like stoic, built like a brick shit house, and and the 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 varied ways of them being like 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 taking care of their weapons and stuff like that. That's a neat idea. Also, another orc that kind of like comes to mind is Dungeon Meshi. Dungeon Meshi orcs, or like the Japanese orc sort of, where like they kind of still have this sense of like tribal, or like uh like how do you say this, clan, or like, you know, like Germanic sort of. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but like, you know, the traditional way of seeing a barbarian or barbarian. Um, but like the specifically is interesting because like Japanese media, or like anime, Japanese fantasy has like orcs becoming more like piggish, and like, and that's an interesting way of drawing orcs, and like representing orcs, because like orcs like having like their tusks and everything, like and I think have always made them like pretty like interesting to me, especially like with the way you kind of represent the orc, because like they're like the orc in this sense has like this sympathetic side, but also has this monstrous side that you can kind of like attach to, because that's the thing with playing an orc as a person. Orcs are inherently like sort of monstrous, like an alternate version, more than just a human. And because like that's what makes playing an orc interesting, because you're more than just human, right? Of course, like of course there's this sense of being humanoid, and like that's an entire discussion. um and I know there's this sense of being humanoid, and like that's an entire discussion in of itself, but like orcs in this sense, like I get why these changes are made, because it you people want to play an orc, because like orcs nowadays, like would like or the orc revision has like made them cool, and I like that. But here's my gripe with these orcs. If you really like, if I really boil them down to like the main idea of what you traditionally see as an orc, like the pelts and like being basically half naked and stuff like that, and I like that idea, but like it's just like nothing is clicking with me, because like it's overdone. That's my main issue, because like I don't mind orcs being like being evil or sympathetic, or that sort of sense. But my main personal issue is that people just draw or like visualize orcs in the same way almost every single time. And I guess that's where my last orc type comes in, which if you watched my first video, and like if you watched my first video and and read the title, you know what orc I'm talking about. Orcs with a K. That is a very important distinction, because orcs with a K, Warhammer 40k orcs have always been my preferred orc, right? Because like when somebody says orc, I think of orcs from Warhammer. Like, because what makes the orcs interesting is because, as Gemgan Glitzdaka would say, they have snaz. They have like, and they have this sense of like awe, like when you like play, when you like watch orc media, or like read, or like get this sense of just looking at orcs, you gotta get the sense of just like, wow, that's really fucking cool. Like like you don't understand like the this primal sense of being so over the top with your representation of orcs, that it just unleashes like the primal like sense of me being this young kid, and seeing something that's really big and really cool, and then just going, yeah, I fucking love that. Yeah, add more bullets, make the barrel bigger, make it louder, make it shoot faster. Like to come to the point that the term Daka has been ingrained in society, where like I've just randomly heard people like that's not even like completely like that's like as far like as I can from like orcs, and just like hear the term Daka, and I just like it like it unleashes this primal sense in my brain that just goes like my favorite orc unit is specifically a breaker boy, specifically the breaker boy with the knuckle dusters who has like piston gauntlets that he attached to his fucking arms. I think he like cut off his arms and like put like piston gauntlets that he uses to punch people and punch like vehicles and shit like really fucking hard, like and like tank busters in general, like tank, like that's my favorite, like those are my favorite units. I'm not even talking about like commandos or like gorkanauts or flashgits, like the let's look at like the gorkanaut for a second. Look at how many fucking miniguns they attached to their fucking like attached to one arm, and just like, oh right, that's right, let him out, let him fight them gits. Like it's so goddamn cool, and like that's the thing that makes orcs interesting to me, because orcs are really fun. They're really fun. And that's kind of what like I that people like kind of forget with like fantasy settings and like fantasy races, because like these like races or like playing these species should be fun, should like get like you hyped to play that like thing, because like I like playing orcs. I love playing orcs. You should, and like these unique ways of kind of like using orcs should be like more appreciated. Like and like while orcs in this sense are more of like a force of nature, they're not really evil. Like you can like, and they're not really good either. They're like neutral, like they're like chaotic neutral than anything. But like orcs like make it really goddamn fun, because like you can be both like a force of nature, a horde, they're literally a horde army, but like also like an orc that you can play like as a commando or a blood or a snaky blood axe get. and like you can and like they are like the sense of being like this sort of balance of playing orcs. And like I think like this like orcs in a sense can be used in many different ways, because like what people forget about orcs is that like, and like especially fantasy as a or like sci-fi, is that it's exactly that, it's a fantasy. And like that's my thing that people kind of forget, is that like orcs you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't like let something else dictate how you see orcs, right? Because like we can have, I like and love every single type of orc, because I love them as an enemy, I love them as a playable character, but I only love them if they are interesting to me. And that's kind of the thing that people kind of forget, is because like we can talk all about like the D&Dification of like fantasy, and like the Tolkienification of fantasy, or whatever it is. But like here's the thing, people just make the same thing over and over and over and don't change it. People don't try and do their own way of doing things, because like once you realize you have free will, you can go hog wild with your fantasy. Like my fantasy setting, the Primitivalis, is like a mixture of fantasy tropes and fantasy settings slammed in with like with duct tape and like sci-fi settings, and I just think it's neat because you can do whatever you want with your like fantasy, because it's just that, it's a fantasy. And especially with orcs with a K exemplify this sense of being like fun with it, because like and like I'm gonna end this discussion off from me specifically with by explaining a flash kit. So you know what a shooter is, right? Or like, you know, a snaz gun. Or you know what and like when you look at a snaz gun, when you really like think for you as a person without a lack of creativity, when you say gun, when somebody says gun, you always think of like you almost immediately think of a gun, like an assault rifle or anything like that, a shotgun, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. But an orc, whenever they see a shooter, it's also like it can look however they want, and especially for snaz guns, flash kits. Uh, Not that flash kits. I have a lot I could say about those flash kits, but specifically, I love these flash kits. Flash kits have snaz guns, and snaz guns can look however they want, and it kind of shows like, and the snaz gun, as said, can look however like you personally want, because it shows what that orc like personally like the snaz gun for an orc, like a flash kit, like kind of like reveals a bit more of what that flash kit is, because like if they have uh like like rockets tied to it, they can be a bit more tank buster. If they have if they have like multiple like lasers and stuff, uh and like plasma guns and stuff like that attached to it, they might be a bit of a mech. Or like if there's a flamethrower attached to it, there may be a bit of a burner boy. It shows the snaz gun can look however they want, and it kind of makes the orc, it kind of like personifies the orc in a sense, because like this gun is more than just a gun to them, just like how this setting is more than just a world to you. Let your world and let your imagination be your snaz gun. That's the best that I can say, because if like it personifies you in any way, shape, or form, that is the benefit, and you are winning D&D to me. That's my personal take on this sort of discourse, and I apologize for this large of a rant, but you clicked on this video, you probably knew who I am. And if you don't, I rant about shit like a ton. I just yap on and on about it, but that's me. And I hope you like my sort of discussion, I guess, this video on orcs in like fantasy and how people kind of do it, because like I always have like like had like a weird issue with people kind of having this discussion of, the orcs aren't orcs aren't monsters anymore. They aren't like cool. And I mean, the radical left has turned D&D to be. Look at how cringe these orcs look. Blah blah blah. Shut the fuck up. But that has always stuck out to me in the wrong way, because like people just like don't realize that like fantasy is yours, and like D&D is not like D&D is not set in one setting. You can make D&D however you want, like, because D&D is free, just like how fantasy is free. You're not set on just being a Tolkien orc or just being a Warcraft orc. You can be whatever orc you want, and like that's the benefit of orcs. Because at least like and like you can say as much as you want about like, oh, how about elves or how about dwarves, but like those people, those like species or races has like a baseline. They've been based off elves and dwarves of like mythology and stuff like that. But orcs are completely like a blank slate. You get a main idea of it, but like you can build off that. Cause like as you said, orcs are orcs. You make it however you want it to be. That's my take on it. And I hope you drink water and have a good rest of your day. And thank you for listening to my rants. I guess I'll see you.
Everything's okay, hey, cause I'm on vacation. We spent 14 hours on that sandcastle. Great, hey.